Hi everyone, this is Tamika from Children of Christ Homeschool. I thought I would come on and share with you this year's or some of this year's reading lists. I've compiled a list of books here on my table, so I'll be reaching over to the side. But I've compiled a list of books that I want my early elementary school students to read, my middle school and my upper elementary and middle school students to read. I don't have a high schooler this year, but I do have a 7th and 8th grader this year. I have a 6th grader, 7th grader, and 8th grader this year. And I also have kindergarten and a 1st grader this year. And I also have a 3rd, 2nd and 3rd and 4th graders this year. So yeah, I have 9 students. So pretty much one of just about each of one of those grades. But in any case, let me get started with, well, before I get started, I just wanted to show you and share with you my, the kids' reading logs this year. So this is the reading log for my lower elementary school students. So my kindergarten and 1st grader are pretty much going to use this book. It's called Reading Log for True Bookworms, and I know it's backwards in the video, but I love it because it's just right for a kindergarten and a 1st grade student. As you can see here, it has it has room for the title, the date. I read this book with, and it has a check mark where you can check, more boxes where you can check mom, my friend, dad, my teacher, all by myself. And then it says, this is how I feel about this book. And so they can pretty much either write a sentence using inventive writing or inventive spelling. They can write that a sentence, or they can dictate a sentence to you, and you can do that. You can help them. And it says, my favorite part is, and then basically it helps them to talk about the story that they read. And then on some of the other pages, there are other questions. This is how I feel after reading this, after reading 10 books in a row. These are the books I want to read next. So it kind of helps them to think as readers. And so I really love this book, and we're going to use this a lot this year. We're going to try to fill up this book. So that's for my early elementary. Sorry, the table moves. This is for my 8th grade student, who is a girl. She, loves owls and, colorful patterns and different things like that. So I thought this was a perfect cover for her. And the first couple pages basically is where you can list all 100 books that you decide to read. But in the corner, it has numbers according to the number of books that you are reading. So each page is exactly the same, with the exception of the numbers in the top left and right hand corners of the page. And basically it has an opportunity, it gives you an opportunity to list the title, the author, the publisher, the page count, whether the book is fiction, nonfiction, and then there are several lines for your review. And so I think that this is a perfect way for them to write about, the books that they read. And here is for the boys who are elementary and middle school age. I thought that this cover was more fitting for boys. And basically it's the exact same thing as the one I just previously showed you, except the cover is different. Okay. So I have that, and my son used this earlier this year. Well, this summer he used this summer, and basically what I've done is I have stapled to these are writing prompts. So this will help them with their review. So I'll staple writing prompts in the front cover of each of the reading logs, and so the students can basically use these as prompts. If I don't know what to write about, I don't know, I can't remember, or kids always come up with all these different things. So without further ado, let's get to my list of books. So the first list of books I'm going to show you is, well, actually, the first book that I'm going to read on the very first day of school on Monday is Who Moved My Cheese? This is a motivational book that I thought would be a great opener for the school year. I'm going to read this to all the students from my lower grades to my upper grades. I feel like it's something that all of them will benefit from. In terms of, if you've read the book before, the book is basically about four little mice who try to get the cheese, and two of those four have a difficult time with change. And so they decide, well, we don't want to live anywhere else. If finding the cheese means moving, then we want to stay right here, even if that means being hungry. And so basically, the book, helps children overcome their fear of change, and the fear of anxiety, that anxiety that they may have about doing something new or challenging themselves. And so I thought this was a great motivational book. This is Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. Great book to start the school year. Okay, so just to get started with my my lower elementary, we are going to read Aesop's Fables. These are classic stories that I think every kindergartner and first grader should learn. So this is a book of short stories that I got from Ollie's. This was about $2, $2.29 from Ollie's. And so I thought it was perfect. You can probably find a version of Aesop's Fables at your local library. So we have that, and I've decided for them to also read the Julian series of books. I love that these books are of an African-American little boy who discovers different things, who enjoys different things, and who's just very adventurous. And so I thought that this was a story that they could definitely relate to. I like that it's small chapters that we can kind of get through fairly quickly, even if we don't finish the read in one sitting. Definitely 2 or 3 sittings will accomplish that. And so we have Julian, Dream Doctor. We have Julian, Secret Agent. We also have the stories Julian tells. And we have Julian's Glorious Summer. And did I read this one? Julian, Dream Doctor. Yes, that was the first one. Julian, Dream Doctor. And so all of these books are by Anne Cameron, and it is the Julian series. I was able to purchase these series of books from my local library. They were on discard from my local library. So I got them for, I think, about 25 or 50 cents, something like that. So these were a great purchase. Then I have The Adventures of Spider. And this is an this is an African folk tale story, basically, about a spider. And so I thought that would be an interesting read for them. Then I have Ollie's Odyssey by William Joyce. William Joyce is a very popular children's book writer. He writes many stories for younger and older children, and we have a couple of his other books. And so I just thought that this would be a great book. Now, this is very thick, and what I intend to do with this book is the kids will listen to this story on YouTube. YouTube has tons of audiobooks, so please, whatever book that you decide you'd like to read, you may be able to find an audiobook for it on YouTube, where the kids can just sit and listen, and as they're listening to the book, they're coloring or doing some other activity. And so we're going to do that. And then I have a second Aesop's Fables here, which is more colorful. It doesn't have as many stories as the first book that I showed you. So I figured that I would read this one first to them, and then the other stories I would read in the other book. I absolutely love this book. This book is called Scarecrow Pete. I love books about books that help encourage children to read books. And this is one of those books. This is a story about a little boy who is so bored. It's summertime and he's super bored. He doesn't know what he wants to do. So his mom gives him this suitcase and she tells him to take that old suitcase out into the garden. And he says, well, what's in the suitcase? And she tells him there are pirates in the suitcase. There are just different adventures in the suitcase. And so when he opens it up, he goes, there's no pirates in here. There's just a bunch of books. But as he begins to read some of the stories like The Wizard of Oz or Peter Pan, he goes on these adventures in the garden, and he has a great summer just reading and adventuring in his imagination. And so I love books like that. This is Scarecrow Pete, and the author is Mark Kimball Moulton. Okay. Here's another book about books that I bought just last year. Love this book. This is The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lesmore. Okay, Morris Lesmore. And this book is about a library. Well, it's about a man who loves books. And one day there is this tornado or this big wind, and it blows everything away, and his books start flying all over the place. And so he ends up living in the library, and he ends up living in this library where he's reading all of these different books. There is a movie to go with this book on Amazon that is about $2.99 for purchase. I would suggest that you read the book and then watch the movie. It is fantastic. My kids absolutely enjoyed that last year. So we are going to do this again this year. I'm going to do this with my younger kids this year. I did it with my older ones last year. So this is a great book to have. Here's another book about books. It's called Wild About Books, and the author is Judy Sierra. And this is just basically a book about farm animals and different types of books that the farm animals like to read. And so you see there are farm animals that are reading books all over. So I love books like this. Another one of my favorite books, this is Mrs. Smith Reads Again. This is, let me see, which one is the first one? Well, there's two of these. I'm not sure exactly which one is the first one, but this is Mrs. Smith's incredible storybook. I think this is the first one. And Mrs. Smith is a teacher, and she has this elementary school class who does not like to read. And so she brings this magical storybook, and every time she opens up the storybook, whatever she's reading about comes to life in the classroom. And so the kids are enthralled and engrossed in these stories, and they absolutely love them. And so this is a fantastic book to encourage your kids to read. And then this is the second book. This is the second volume to Mrs. Smith's. Yeah, Mrs. Smith Reads Again. Yeah. Okay, so I'm coming down to the wire here. This is The Curious Adventures of the Abandoned Toys. I have not read this book yet, but I did read the summary on the book, and it sounds great. It sounds basically about toys that were abandoned, and they were abandoned in the woods, and they kind of group themselves together, and they go on this great adventure to find homes for themselves. And so I thought that this would be a fun read for my littles. This book, I absolutely love this book. I recommend, please get this book. If you are a Christian homeschool, or even if you're not and you just really want, to read a great book, this is the book to read. This is called The Evergreen Wood. What I love about this book is because the author, Alan and Linda Parry, what they've done is they've taken the story of Christian living, basically, and they've put it in a form in which the children can easily understand. And basically, it's about this little mouse named Christopher. And Christopher reads this sign one day, and it says that the woods in which he lives is going to be destroyed. And so he goes and he tells his wife, hey, we've got to get out of here because where we're living right now is about to be destroyed. And so his wife doesn't believe him. And so his wife and children say, oh, man, you're just talking crazy. Go on with yourself. And so Christopher leaves his wife, and he leaves his children, and he's in search, because the sign that he read said, come and live in the Evergreen Wood. And so the Evergreen Wood represents heaven. And the woods that was being destroyed represents earth, where when Christ comes back, the earth will be destroyed. And so whoever is not prepared and whoever isn't ready will be lost or left behind. And so Christopher realizes that. And so he goes on this adventure. I mean, this is a fantastic book. I can't say enough about it. I don't want to tell the whole story. I want you to get the book. Read this book. Okay, that ends it for my elementary school ages. I'm hoping that my battery does not die and that I don't run out of space. But now I'm going to get quickly started with my middle schoolers, my upper elementary school kids. And here are some of the books that we're going to read. We're going to read The Egg Drop Blues. We're going to read Pictures of Hollis Woods. We're going to read The Toothpaste Millionaire. Freedom's Wings, Corey's Underground Railroad Diary. I Have a Dream, the story of Martin Luther King. The Family Under the Bridge. This is going to be a wonderful story to read. Just to give you a little background on this story, it's about a homeless man who meets this family of who meets this mom and 3 kids who also become homeless, and they find a way to work together to find a home. And I just think that this is a fabulous story for kids to understand that, you know, how blessed they really are. We're going to read Justin and the Best Biscuits in the World. We're going to read Safe at Home. The Slave Dancer. Caleb's Story. Making the Team. And the second book, Learning the Rules. Because of Winn-Dixie. The Phantom Toll Booth. Augie and Me and the Three Wonder Stories. And we're also going to read Wonder. I haven't gotten that book from the library just yet, but these are the books that I own. So when I get the chance to get to the library, I'll pick up the Wonder story. Okay, so that ends it for my upper elementary school, and now I'm going to talk about what my middle schoolers are going to be reading. My middle schoolers are going to read The Time Quartet by Madeline LeEngle. Now, we all know The Time Quartet, right? A Wrinkle in Time, those stories, A Wind, I think it's called A Wind by the Door or A Wind Under the Door. Let me tell you the stories that are in here. These are, yes, A Wrinkle in Time, A Wind in the Door, A Swiftly Tilting Planet, and Many Waters. Okay, so they are going to read these, and I also have the movie A Wrinkle in Time, so they'll get to read that. They'll get to watch that after they read the story. And this is An Acceptable Time. Also for them, I have The Magician